you can generate up to £2,500 in revenue, which gives us profit of about £1,000 in each month. We're getting revenue of over £3,000 based on this being a serviced accommodation unit. Sometimes just over a weekend can actually generate £2,000 in profit. So I didn't actually use any of my money on this, which is absolutely unbelievable. The first time ever that I ever did that, and even now I still struggle to believe that it's actually true. Hi all, my name is Muzinduna and I'm a full-time property investor. Today I'm going to be showing you some of the portfolio of properties that we have in a rent-to-rent portfolio that generates over £20,000 a month in profits. So I'm based in Nuneaton, which is a small town just outside of Coventry. And when I started in investing in property, it was through Progressive back in 2019. This is a time when I was in full-time employment and I'd never heard of any of these strategies that we're going to be talking through today. Now, I've slowly built my portfolio up until the properties that we have now, which is just over 30. And I am fortunate enough to become a mentor as well in the Normandy Mastermind. Before we get started, if you're interested in any of this information or getting more progressive knowledge or how to learn how to do what I'm about to show you now, please hit the like and subscribe button and hit that notification bell. Now, let's get into the video. So for me, property was always something that I wanted to do at some point. I'm originally from Zimbabwe, and there's this element of true success, and you've really made it in life if you either have a house or houses. So property to me was always the pinnacle of success, and is something I always wanted to do at some point in life. What I didn't realize is it doesn't have to be a lifelong plan, where in my head I was thinking, if I really make it in life, I'll have the house that I live in or maybe one more that I am renting. But being introduced to all of these strategies showed me that I can actually cut down what I classed as a 40-year plan into probably a 3-4 year plan, which has been an amazing blessing, really, to be fair. But property, just to go back to your question, property is something that I think everyone wants to be part of anyway, either the one that you're living in or potentially the one that you can use as a legacy for generational wealth. So this is the first property I'm going to talk you through, the one that you're seeing just behind us here. It's a 3-bedroom, fully detached property, which was the first ever deal that we had. And this came about from a challenge that we had with Kevin McDonald on the Mastermind. So on this 7-day challenge, the intention was to at least get one deal from following those instructions. And after following all of the instructions, I got 2 deals. We have 2 deals! 2 deals! Woo! And Kevin doesn't know this, but when I did the 7-day challenge, I actually wanted to prove that it doesn't work. And I followed every single instruction to point out that after everything that he's asked me to do, it's not going to work. But fortunately and unfortunately, I actually got 2 deals from the process, which actually proves that the process does work. You follow the process and the results will come through. This is a rent-to-rent property where the rent was £850, the bills around £450, so therefore our outgoings in total about £1,300, but we're getting revenue of over £3,000 based on this being a serviced accommodation unit. So as a serviced accommodation property, this one was generating over £3,000 in revenue, and this was based on contractors that were working in this area. And also, for anyone who knows Northampton, in the summer we have the Formula 1 racing, the Silverstone, which sometimes just over a weekend can actually generate £2,000 in profit. So that's the first property out the way. On to the next one. In my opinion, it is only a deal when everyone involved is winning. So I hear people talk about, I need to have a below market value deal, or I need to secure a rent-to-rent property where I can have 3, 4, 5 months rent free so that I can utilize that property and generate income before I have to pay the landlord. All of those things are only good for you if they're also good for the person that you're working with. Every stakeholder involved needs to be winning in one way or another. So that, to me, is what makes a good deal before we speak about the financial implications. So obviously, you want to make sure that the deal that you're securing is going to generate an income. It's not necessarily going to lose you any money. I think that's secondary. But to come back to your question of what makes a good deal, it's when every stakeholder is winning. So this is the second property that we're going to go through, which is also in Northampton. So this is a 2-bedroom apartment, which is just here. And this property actually started off as a rent-to-rent. We had it as a rent-to-rent for about 3 years, and now it's been converted to a lease option, because you can do that. Have a conversation with the landlords and actually find out if they're going to be looking to sell the property at some point in the future. And this is exactly what we did for this one, which they agreed a 6-year lease option. Now, when we took on the property initially at a rent of £750, the bills for apartments are not really that much, so it was about £250. But because we're in Northampton, as I mentioned earlier on, we get the Silverstone that comes through here for the Formula One. You can generate up to £2,500 in revenue, which gives us profit of about £1,000 in each month. So one of the other exciting things about this property, which is why it performs really well, besides the fact that we're in Northampton for Silverstone, is because it's right next to a hospital as well. And most of the clients that we get here, even though they're on Airbnb and Booking.com, these are actually nurses and doctors that come here to work on a temporary basis. And this is one of the reasons why it performs really well. So that is all about this amazing 2-bedroom apartment. On to the next one. My understanding of investing in property was you're only going to generate income if the property is one that you own. So you have to buy the house first for you to make money out of it. So the strategy that really struck out for me at the time was the rent-to-rent strategy, where you can control someone else's property. So they buy it and they rent it out to you. You can then re-rent it out in a different strategy where the income that you're generating is higher than how much you have to pay to the landlord. Obviously, you have to make sure that what you're paying out to the landlord is lower than what you're generating. And you can change that strategy by, for example, you take on a 4-bedroom house, you rent it out per room whilst you're paying the rent for the whole house. Or you can utilize platforms like Airbnb, where you can rent out the property on a nightly basis. Or you can manage the property by giving it out to entities like supported living, children's homes, where they can pay you a significantly more amount than what you're paying to the landlord. So the cash flow is the difference between what you're paying out and what you're bringing in. So that's exactly how it works for the properties that we actually manage at the moment. Right, so this one is a beautiful 5-bedroom detached property. And I was talking earlier on about how these strategies on rent to rent and acquiring other people's properties and generating income can be really helpful. And you can use them for serviced accommodation, you can use them from HMOs, but this here is actually a children's home. So it's great to know that you can make money in property, but it's even better to know that you can actually help people who are in a vulnerable situation. And this is what we use this property for. It's actually acquired on a rent-to-rent basis. And as it is right now, even though we're helping children, we're generating income, it is still generating an income on a rent-to-rent basis. I'm not necessarily running the children's home itself. I'm actually accommodating the company that does that. And because we're doing that, we can still generate an income, the difference between what we're paying the landlord and what we're being paid by the tenant. So this property right now, we're paying a rent of £2,500 and we're still getting paid £3,300, which gives us an £800 buffer, which is the cash flow that we generate. Now, the beauty of this is the tenants themselves actually take care of pretty much everything that we would be obliged to take care of as the tenants of the landlords. So they take care of the maintenance, they take care of all of the voids. We don't need to worry about any of that. What we do is liaise with them and actually help them out with whatever it is that they need to do. Now, building relationships with people that do something like this is really important for me in particular. So even though it's not an obligation for us to take care of the maintenance and taking care of the garden and stuff like that, we still do that to actually assist in making sure that this is actually a good children's home for the people that we're providing the service for. So that's this one on the children's home, and this is the last house that we've got in Northampton. Now it's off to Coventry to see the rest of my portfolio. Let's go. If the landlord knows that you're making more money than what you're paying them, why wouldn't they do it themselves, right? At the same time, as understandable as it is that anyone would think that, it is also at the same time a bit of a silly thing to think, because not everyone is in the position that you're in, where you've got the time to be doing all of that management or worrying about all of that. A lot of people that purchase houses want to buy the houses so that they generate income without them having to do anything. They don't want to have to deal with tenants. They don't want to have to deal with the ups and downs of property as a whole. They don't want to deal with guests checking in and checking out on a daily basis, because they're either in their own full-time jobs or they're running their own businesses. They don't want that noise. And a lot of the landlords that I work with personally are happy that I'm making money out of their properties, because what they really want, their main pain point, is the fact that they don't have to worry about the houses. The house is well taken care of and the rent is being paid on time. Then it's happy days for everyone, because that's all they're actually looking for. Not everyone is looking to make the most amount of money out of their property. Some people's pain points have nothing to do with finance. So we're just outside Coventry now. Bonus point if you tell us where we are right now. And I'm just going to take you through the portfolio of the properties that were acquired in the Coventry area with all sorts of different strategies. So the reason I actually chose Coventry, besides the fact that I'm actually close to here, is based on some collaboration that we had with some of the people that I met at the multiple streams of property income at Progressive back in 2019. And speaking of collaborations, guess who I found here?
Ta-da! Great to be here, Muzzy. And talking of the multiple streams of property income event, if you want to reach limitless earning potential and be able to build a property portfolio just like Muzzy has here, then we need to get to the multiple streams of property income event. So you can have collaborations with people like Muzzy and myself and build the portfolio that we can build, so that you can get time freedom, financial freedom, and do what you want, when you want, with who you want. So make sure that you click the link below to secure your place now. So Muzzy, shall we see your portfolio in Coventry?
Let's go. So this one is the first ever buy-to-let property that we actually purchased. And the interesting story about this one here, which is a 3-bedroom house terrace just behind me, is that the vendor of the property, one of the challenges that he had, which is one of the reasons he wanted to sell the property, is one, he wanted a bungalow because he was tired of going up and down the stairs. The other reason is the fact that this street was a bit of a notorious street at the time, and there's kids that would knock on the door and run off. So what he used to do is he had a baseball bat by the door, and every time someone knocked on the door, he'd grab a baseball bat and chase them with it. What he didn't realize is the kids did it for that reason, because it was quite entertaining. Now the problem is, when I set up the viewing with him, he forgot about the viewing. So I showed up and knocked on the door, and when he opened the door, he had a baseball bat chasing me down, and I was thinking, what the hell's going on here? However, he didn't beat me up. I'm okay, guys, just to let you know. Story forward, we actually offered on this property, we purchased it at 94,495. It's 94,495. It was valued at 120, so it was a bit below market value. Private investor finance that we used for that, and then we did an extension, which I'm just going to show you in a minute. We purchased the property, refinanced it after about 6 months, and managed to pull all of the funds out. The funds that were left in were funds that were actually raised on a bounce back loan, because we were allowed to actually do some refurbishment on a bounce back loan, but we couldn't purchase the property. So for the next 2 years after that, the property itself actually paid itself off. So I didn't actually use any of my money on this, which is absolutely unbelievable. The first time ever that I ever did that, and even now I still struggle to believe that it's actually true.
So Muzzy, here we are at the back of the property that we've just been looking at.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you bought the property for 94,450, correct?
It's 94,495.
94,495.
Yes.
But you refinanced it at 140.
At 140, yes.
So how does that work? So if you buy it for like around 94,000,
Yeah,
how do you end
yeah.
up getting 140,000 out at the end?
We added value to the property, and the biggest part of the change that we made was this extension that you're seeing here. So it didn't have an extension, you only had one shower room upstairs. We created a bathroom and created more space, and it's very obvious once you have a look at it that there's a lot more value that's been added to it. Even though it was initially valued at 122, we bought it at 94,495. The new value was at 140,000 before we refinanced it 6 months after we did the work.
Wow, so you added the extension, which
Yeah.
added space, which added value.
Absolutely.
But of course you have to put money in to add the extension, right?
Correct,
So how much did the
correct.
whole refurb cost you?
So the whole refurb in total cost us £28,000. So we purchased the property at 94,495, spent 28 grand to just do the refurb. The new value was 140. So when we did the refinance, it got back at 75% of the new loan to value So the new value was 140, 75% of that is what we got, which is 106,000. This
Wow.
allowed us to pay off the private investor who had funded the initial amount. So what was left was just what we used for the refurb. However, that was paid off by the tenant, obviously, because we then kept the property on to run it. Therefore, all in all, I didn't actually spend any money.
I think that's crazy. You know,
wild.
a private investor completely funded this deal. You got all the money back out through a refinance.
Yeah.
There'll be some people out there who don't believe you can do no money down. What
Well,
would you
yeah,
say to those people?
That was me. I'll be honest with you, before I actually found out about how this actually works. So no money down to me was just a mystery. It's like, it's a myth. That doesn't really work. It makes no sense. What I then understood after being explained to me is no money down is none of your own money. Money is required for any deal. However, it doesn't necessarily have to be yours. And this is exactly what happened with this one. So the purchase price and the cost of the legals and the stamp duty were paid off by the private investor. The funds that were required for the refurb was a bounce back loan at the time. Those funds, all in all, is just a case of speaking to the investor, applying for funding for the refurb. None of my money. I put in the time, I put in the knowledge. I spent a lot of time with the builders here getting to learn how it is that it was going to work. But all in all, I didn't actually spend any of my money.
Wow,
right?
amazing.
So all of the money then eventually come back. And because it's a bounce back loan that was left in, we had to pay it off. And it was about 2.5% interest, which is kind of free money. Because it was paid off on a monthly basis, how much we were paying on a monthly basis is lower than what we were getting for rentals. Therefore, it's the tenants that were paying the loan off. So we've actually managed to finish paying off the bounce back loan. By say we, it's the tenants that was paying it. The refinance paid off the private investor. So if you look at it as a whole, I didn't spend any of my money at all.
Free house.
It's essentially a free house.
Do you know, that's absolutely amazing. And I have a question for you. You mentioned this was your first ever buy to let.
Yeah.
So why would an investor invest with you if you hadn't done a deal before?
That is absolutely wild, right? So before I had done this, I would ask myself that question. And to be honest with you, I talked myself out of many deals for that reason alone.
What, because you didn't think the investor would give you
Yeah,
any money because
why?
you didn't have any credibility?
Right,
You felt
why
like you
would
didn't?
anyone want to give me money? And this is how I looked at it. They were giving me money to buy my property, which is take. So why would anyone do that? In a situation like this, where I found the opportunity, they bring in the funds. They're actually getting interest on the funds that they're putting in, which they weren't using before. And essentially, it's a win for them too. It's a win for the person that's selling the property because they need the funds to do whatever they need to do. It's a win for the investor who's put the funds because they're getting an interest on money that's lying dormant. And it's a win for me because I'm getting a property without having to spend any of my money. So I am actually putting in the time and the knowledge. They're putting in the funds, and we're making this work for everyone to win.
Do you know what? I totally get it. Like, so if an investor has money just sitting in the bank account somewhere, like inflation's eating it away, right?
Absolutely.
You know, so they need to get that money working for them.
Absolutely.
They need to get that money working. So you, with this deal, found a way to create a win-win for everybody.
That's exactly what I would call a deal. If someone in that opportunity is not winning, then it's not a deal.
So Mazzy, what else are you going to show us today?
So we've got one more property that I'm going to show you today because I don't want to overwhelm you with all my brilliance, right? One more property we're going to show you, which is an HMO that's in Nuneaton. So let's go. So this final property that we've got is a 5-bedroom HMO. So this was my first HMO to acquire back in 2020, January 2020. Now this is a brilliant property because it's well located right next to a hospital. And the HMO was actually used at the time only for doctors and nurses, and it worked really well. However, even though it's set up as an HMO, it is now being used for supported living. It's taking care of people that are vulnerable and also families, teenagers, and this is what it's currently being used for right now. So this property is acquired on a rent-to-rent basis. And even though I've had it for about 5 years, it's had an increase of rent just twice and by £50 each. So currently paying rent of £900, and the tenant who've got in there right now is paying £1,750. So we're cash flowing £800 in that property, just over £800. Also, like many properties that are on a rent-to-rent basis, the landlords see these houses as a retirement plan. The landlord for this property is doing the exact same thing. His plan is to then sell this house at the point that he retires. So we're currently in conversations with him now to actually agree a future price at the point that they're looking to retire, and then acquire the property now on a long-term basis, which is one of the strategies that I learned at Progressive, which is called the lease option agreement. So that's part of what we're actually talking about right now, and hopefully sometime soon, we're going to secure this property on a lease option.
So Muzzy, you said this was your first HMO that you're taking on a rent-to-rent basis.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you. For anybody out there who's thinking about getting into rent-to-rent, if you have a tenant, if you have a void period and there's a room empty, I mean, are you making a loss? How do you protect yourself against that?
So we run by a 1.5 rule, which is something that I learned to Progressive as well. The 1.5 rule is you want to try to make sure your profit is at least 1.5 times the room rent. So to make things simple, if my room rent is £500, my profit is 1.5 times 500, which is 750. This means if one tenant leaves, I'm making £250.
Ah, so you're still not losing.
I'm still not losing
what
money.
A great way to de-risk it.
But to be honest with you, a lot of what I do personally is based on my experience as a tenant before and how I was treated back then as well. So it kind of gives you an idea of how you want to treat another tenant, what you liked and what you didn't like. So you replicate what you liked, you try to eradicate what you didn't like. So in a situation like this one, it's nice to know that the people that are in there are actually being really taken care of. And this is something that we actually try to push on an ethical aspect. So yeah, I think it's a really good thing from my point of view. Right, so we've come to an end of the property tour. We've gone through all these different strategies from the supported living, service accommodation, HMOs, and the buy-to-let, and how you can purchase properties without using any of your money. And it is actually quite fantastic to have gone through that journey, even for myself as a reminder. But the truth is, I'm no different to many of you guys watching now. So if I can do it, surely you guys can do it too. For all the people that actually click the link below, you can come on the free event on the multiple streams of property income, where you can learn a lot more about these strategies and how they can work where you are, with what you have, and where you are right now. So I've been Muzinduna.
And I've been Sean Fitzpatrick, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at a future multiple streams of property income event in Peterborough. Click the link below now. You know what's the worst about property? Spending hours scrolling through portals convincing yourself you're doing property when really you're just browsing and missing out on deals all the time. Meanwhile, successful investors in your area are snapping up deals you never even knew existed. And that's where Property Filter comes in. It's the UK's highest rated platform to find deals. It helps you identify motivated sellers, do deals, and get results in property. And this isn't just a theory. The Property Filter members have had over 3,250 offers accepted in the last 12 months alone. Without a system to find motivated sellers, you will keep wasting weekends on pointless viewings and telling yourself there are no deals out there, when the truth is you're just not seeing them. If you want to find deals that actually stack in today's market, Guillaume Black, the CEO and co-founder at Property Filter, is running an exclusive deal finding masterclass next Monday at 8 p.m, where he'll share the hottest deal making tactics working right now and find real deals live using areas and strategies that you suggest on the call. Head to go.property-filter.co.uk/pp to register. Put your name and email address to secure your spot. You will never struggle to find deals again.